Hello, I'm Liam Dan, New Zealand Herald Business Editor at Large, and welcome to Money Talks. This is a podcast about money, but we're not going to tell you how to get rich, and we're not going to try and pick the next interest rate move. In this series, I talk to interesting New Zealanders about how money has shaped their lives and what they've learned about it over the years. For today's podcast, I'm joined by well-known entrepreneur who has had a hand in many companies over the years, Derek Handley. Kia ora, Derek. Welcome to Money Talks.
Thanks for having me.
Just to start out, you have done many different things, so this is maybe a tough question, but how would you explain what you do to a child?
My God, that's a very interesting question. I don't have to do it every day. I actually found it always difficult to explain what I do. I think entrepreneur is partly, how you say that, because everything I've done is somehow helping create something. And that's, I guess, the common thread. I always want to be involved in the co-creation or the catalyzing of something, whether it's a company, a non-profit, a campaign, some sort of a communications initiative. I've done such a variety of things. I've co-created a fund, which is a venture investing fund, which invests in entrepreneurs, which is being on the other side of the fence. But actually, to build a fund, you have to be an entrepreneur. Like It's all, so it always kind of comes back to that.
Your name's synonymous with the tech side of things. Is that just because I think it's the
maybe
front
because it
edge of
started.
things? Yeah.
When we first met, I was doing something very at the frontier of technology, right?
Yeah, I think I interviewed you maybe in year 2000. Something
I think you were my very first.
And that was that Fever Pitch?
Yeah. So we were building. It's very far from where I am now, but how to bet on your phone against other people.
And it was all a brave new world, really, wasn't it?
It was the first kind of execution of like what you can actually do on your phone that's, not just using it for phoning and text in New Zealand, largely.
Yeah.
So,
that was like literally we were still in that .com boom.
Yeah.
Or, maybe it was the tail end of it. Yeah. How would you describe things in the industry now, the sort of startup industry, and how's it all looking at the moment?
I think it's much more fascinating now. Almost anyone can start a company, and money is a lot less of an object in terms of like a hurdle, because, you can build stuff so quickly digitally that doesn't take a lot of resources. You don't even need engineers anymore to build products. So the world is much more open to everybody. It's much more democratized. And of course, the infrastructure and the ecosystem in different parts of the world is far more sophisticated. In New Zealand, there was no ecosystem pretty much at all when I started. And now there's a thriving ecosystem, tons of, really valuable, successful companies, same across the ditch. And, the startup world has literally transformed everybody's everyday life. The companies that everyone interacts with now almost every day, the most, whether it's Netflix, WhatsApp, all the AI products, they're all once upon a time, not too long ago, a startup.
Yeah. At that time, I remember I think Fever Pitch was involved. NZX was doing a sort of alternative exchange, and everything seemed to be based around raising capital to the exchanges. That's all sort of changed too, hasn't it? People probably aren't going into the startup world in New Zealand now thinking that the NZX is necessarily.
I think it's not a hope really for companies, and Xero did something really interesting, and then they decided there's other paths for them as well, but there's so many other avenues, and even in the US, it's longer and longer and longer until a company will go public, and there's actually, for a lot of them, not many reason for them to. So it's a different world. Yeah, the IPO, I don't think is the same dream as it once was.
Sure. Hey, look, I'll come back to some of that stuff. I want to jump right back if I can, talk a little bit about money and your childhood and things. So you grew up in Hong Kong, right? Mm-hmm. And so what did your parents do?
My parents had a business. Yeah, so my dad was a whiskey salesman who came through from Scotland, who was doing, selling whiskey all around the world. And he met my mum at one of these stops in Hong Kong. And then that's where he stopped. He stopped going around the world. And after a few, so when I was born, he was working for this big, corporate in Hong Kong, big group, company, big job, multiple cars, drivers, holiday homes, all this stuff. And then when I was about 5, he decided he wanted to do it himself. And so he left all of that. Our house kind of shrunk. We lost all of those kind of accoutrements, and we just five of us just crammed in a totally different environment, and they started the trading business that they their own one that was doing a similar thing, bringing interesting products, wines and spirits and things into Hong Kong. It was a very traditional kind of Hong Kong type of business model.
Sure. So you actually remember, the change from maybe things being a bit more affluent to suddenly being a bit tougher?
Yeah, just about just those last few years, 5 and 6, because our house literally it just shrank. Like we went into less than 1,000 square feet, and there was 6 of us, and we had all these other cars and holiday homes because they all came with the package. And then it was like, well, I actually start on my own, so everything has to be different. So it was really
yeah.
It didn't impact us in terms of
your kids,
the same amount of fun. Yep.
Did you have pocket money, and do you remember money around?
When I was very small, I don't remember getting pocket money much, but you have a few things going on in Hong Kong, one of which is the biggest time of the year is when it's Chinese New Year and get your lycees.
Oh yeah.
And so my mum's we have Asian, I'm half from Asia, and so you have this Chinese aspect into our family, and so when you get that day of lycee, you get so much money as a kid.
This is the lucky money.
It's the lucky money.
Comes in an envelope, and
it's like the biggest day of the year, because as a kid you're like, no one can tell me what to do with this money.
Yeah.
I get to choose whatever G.I. Joes or Legos. So that was really a big deal. And my earliest memory of actual dealing with money was sometimes I'd go down and play football in the in the complex that we lived in, and my mum might give me $4 or $5 to go and get Yakults for a pack of chips. And my grandma, who used to take me on the bus sometimes into the city, the bus seat was $2.50, and a 4-pack of Yakult was $2.50. And I was very small. She used to say, if you sit on my knee, I'll give you $2.50 instead of paying the other fare. And you can go and use that and buy a pack of Yakult.
So that was like win-win business deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's great.
Yakult's a lot more than $2.50 now.
So how old were you when you came to New Zealand?
I was 14. Yeah. Fourth form. Yeah.
And so was that, you got Scotland and Hong Kong, and what was New Zealand just a random choice, or?
No, it was my mum's sister that left. She came to New Zealand very early on. So she left as a teenager. She left from Hong Kong to here. So we'd always had a family connection. We spent a lot of time here as I was growing up. And then as 1997 came closer, and you kind of have this window into what's going to change in the world, many families wanted to move somewhere else where they could have a reliable future. And, our family were like, well, we don't want to go back to the UK. We're not, nothing in Australia, maybe, but actually, why don't we go home? Why don't we go to New Zealand? And that's kind of how we built our home here. It's kind of family ties.
Do you recall it as being a culture shock? Especially at that age. It's
I knew New Zealand.
From holidays and things.
And I was excited, but I was also leaving at a time where I had, almost full autonomy in Hong Kong.
Right.
The transport, it's very safe. You're just out anytime at night. You're able to do a lot as a kid. And then I come here, and it's like you can't go anywhere. It's very hard to get around. And so that was the biggest shock. Yeah.
And this was into Auckland, right?
Yeah.
Selwyn College.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay. Yeah.
And so was there a sort of an entrepreneurial spirit that you brought with you, do you think?
Pretty much straight away. I had my best friend in Hong Kong, Ken Kwok, who I'm actually going to Hong Kong on the weekend. We're having dinner on Sunday. We became like little business partners at 14.
Yep.
And I was like, hey, they've got they don't have the right PlayStation games here. They don't have the best Sega.
So you
engine.
saw the opportunity in New Zealand because we were behind.
Go down to the markets, buy a bunch of them and ship them over. And so I would just start selling these things, obviously in the trade and exchange. So our house phone would just be ringing like mentally, and my dad was like, what are all these people ringing about? And they're coming over to buy like a pack of, Sega games or something.
Would you consider you are quite known for the tech thing, but were you a techie kid? Were you kind of like a computer nerd?
Not
or was
really.
It more the,
no.
Yeah, it was more just that's where the opportunity was.
Ideas, opportunities, interest. I loved the games as well, and I was like, I want these games. And when you go down to Noel Leeming's, they're like $200. I was like, let's do something about that. So that was super fun, and it was really successful.
Yeah.
So successful that I got letters from Sony saying, hey, because at the time you couldn't parallel import stuff.
Right.
And they're like,
so they noticed.
They're like, you've got to stop doing this because this is not allowed, which is obviously in today's world bizarre.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, kids are all over the place. What are the drop shipping or
I know exactly
sneakers or whatever they can
That's right.
sell.
That's right. I'm an OG drop shipper.
Yeah.
Except the dropping and shipping took about 8 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. And how about at school? Did you focus on, did you have an idea that you wanted that school was useful and you were going to do the right sort of courses and degrees for business and that sort of thing?
Not really, but I did have, so I had kind of I was a split, kind of personality. I also wanted to be an architect. And that's all, to me, it's actually all very related. So I was always studying design, technical drawing, all this kind of stuff, physics to get into architecture school, while also doing like economics and things. I was like, maybe I will want to do something in the business world. And I eventually thought, maybe I'd want to build some sort of company that was involved in, architecture, like hotels or something.
Yeah.
Somehow bring them together. So I actually went down to Wellington to go to architecture school. That was the original vision.
Yeah.
I did that for a number of years. And halfway through, I was like, I don't think I actually want to be an architect. I think I want to just build and design interesting things.
Yeah.
And that can be a company, that can be a campaign, that can be a nonprofit, that can be a product. So architecture school was also a lot about design and creativity. And that's essentially, I guess, the fluid combination where I graduated with a architectural science degree and a finance degree. And it kind of you look back and you're like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so you just got sidetracked or swept up in, things like Fever Pitch and Hyper Factory, which was a great success. And with your brother, Jeffrey, is that right?
Yeah.
So did that sort of just grow into the main pathway?
Yeah, so I started by thinking, what does the future, what does the future hold, and how do you build something that is part of shaping the future? That was I became more and more interested in these kind of bigger questions and what can you build that's exciting? It wasn't like I had I found a problem, I need to solve it. Sometimes I think about things like that, but often it's like, where's the world going and how do we either create something that's interesting or solve a problem that's responding to something that's larger, that's happening over the long term? And that's essentially been the hallmark of everything I've done. And so the Hyper Factory was around, where's the world going? What's going from the internet to people's pockets? Okay, let's build a company based on that idea. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then we kind of iterated and figured out, well, what should you build? What do you need to build? What do you need to know? And back to your question, I knew nothing about software. So you find people and you hire them and then you learn about how to manage software and project manage, and all of a sudden you've got 100 engineers in Hyderabad in India. So to me, it's always been, you don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
You need to know what you want to do and then find the people who know how to do it, and then you can learn. And that's kind of effectively what we did,
Sure. What would you say was your first, you were doing the importing, but what would you describe as your first proper business?
I think it was Hyper Factory. Yeah, people were paying, they're like, oh, this is amazing, using text. Every time we're in the car with my son on George FM and they're like, oh, the text machine's on and, fire on your text. And we're like, yeah, we invented that. And every single radio station and TV station in New Zealand that used it at the time, they bought ours. And, nobody else in the world had it. So you're like, wow, people love that. That's a product. Then you're like, oh, we have a company.
Yeah. It was as you say, it was the sort of tail end of that first wave of the .com boom. There was also things going crash and
it was totally imploding.
So how did you view all that? You have wins and losses. That's just part of being an entrepreneur, right?
Well, I'd come in after that had happened, right?
Yeah.
So I viewed it as, okay, this is a good time to start, because if you can make something work when things are very difficult, for example, the company I'm building right now, which is around first home ownership, is a very difficult time to build that company. It's possibly the worst possible time to start a company in this world, in this space, a couple of years ago. Yeah, if you can make it work now, wow, when things come back, then you're going to be in really great shape. And that was the same theory I had around the .com. I was like, okay, this is probably the hardest time to start any kind of technology company, because anyone who's like what we'd call the tourist, who comes in because it's hot and then leaves when it's hard, they're all going to be gone. So as long as you've got an idea and you've got a vision and you start and you grind and you survive, you're probably more likely to succeed than ever. And that's, that was the philosophy, as opposed to like reading all the magazines going, oh my God, this thing is over, I shouldn't start anything now.
Yeah.
It was almost like, oh, this looks like the best time to start.
Which is kind of how share market investors talk about the counter-cyclical
Absolutely.
thing, right?
And, most people don't have the courage or the fortitude to do that, because they're like, wait a minute, everyone's going that way. You're telling me to go this way? And whereas to me, that's quite exciting.
Yeah.
Sometimes it works out for me, sometimes not.
Yeah. Was there a moment where you felt like you'd really broken through, that you could say, well, look, this is something, I've made it? I guess this Hyper Factory sale was a big one.
Yeah, I think selling a company to a big publicly listed US company, going through that process, even, it doesn't really matter the scale. It's like the exercise itself is, from a company perspective, it's a great achievement. And to me, that was a testament of, can you build something straight out of university, a bunch of kids that goes all around the world and becomes like a first, I guess, Kiwi global startup success story. And that actually is what motivated me the most. Can you show that it can be done when you're in your early 20s, going and breaking new ground that has never been broken before? When I got to New York, there was no other New Zealander almost at all that I could find, period, let alone another New Zealander building a startup in New York or any sort of venture or anything. So that was the thrill of it. It's like, can you show people what some Kiwis who had no real right being there, but also no real right not being there, what they can do? So when an American company goes, this is amazing, and we're like, well, half our people are in New Zealand. They're like, yeah, that's okay. We love what you're doing. It is kind of a testament to, something working.
Yeah. And it already probably doesn't seem as strange now, that idea. Like, New Zealand companies
that's extremely
in LA or San Francisco.
People are doing it all the time.
Yeah.
So they're constantly taking that leap because there's so many people that have trodden it before them.
Yeah. How about, is there a point where a company has sort of done its dash? How do you, when you're working with a lot of businesses and things, how do you know that there's the cycle of a company and all that sort of stuff?
I think it's after you've tried enough iterations and it hasn't, worked.
You have to be quite accepting of failure to be an entrepreneur, though, don't you? Like people.
I don't think you want to accept it, but you have to acknowledge it.
That it happens.
Yeah.
If you're afraid to fail, you don't do anything, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that's the same in investing. Venture investing is very similar. You have to have conviction. You can't be afraid that this company is going to go under. Like, there's a huge chance it's going to go under. But if you're going to make a venture capital bet, then it's about balancing all those odds and thinking, actually, I have a lot of conviction that there's a high chance that this will work. So you can't really be like someone that, it's just, sometimes you are afraid of it. There is some sort of fear, but you still have to kind of walk into it and breathe into it and just do it anyway with the mindset that you believe it's the right thing to do. A lot of the things that are really meaningful that you do as a person are still frightening to do. It's not that there's no fear. It's just the way that you kind of manage it.
Yeah. Yeah. Does it leave you open, or have you felt that this is the way your career has worked is probably a lot more common in the US, right? So people are doing that sort of thing. But in New Zealand, I don't hesitate to say tall poppy, but it leaves you open to, being attacked by the media or whatever.
Yeah.
Or people for failures.
It definitely does. I think I have a lot of people across New Zealand who think, who's that, Muppet, like, what does he think he's done? Who does he think he is? And, when I was a bit younger, I think I was more tied up about, well, what do people think? And right now, I honestly could not give a shit, because the people who are saying that are the people who are actually should be looking at themselves about what issues they have, what risks they haven't taken, what screw-ups they've had in their lives. And the easiest thing for them to do is to look at other people and kind of talk them down or kind of shit-talk them. And that stuff, to me, it used to get on my nerves, and now it's like, I understand where that's coming from, and it's definitely not me. It's you. And I guess the modern version of that now is people just smashing the comment sections on socials, right? And again, going back to us trying to change the game of how to get people into their first home, the content that we put out there sometimes, which is challenging the narrative, saying, actually, a lot more of you could do this if you understood. And the comment sections explode with people going, you don't know how, I'm like, okay, well, if if you don't believe, there's no way. If you're not willing to listen, there's no way. You can't start,
Well, let's talk a little bit about that now. That's Aera, is that right? Yeah. So
it's confusing because my fund is also called Aera.
Right. Yeah. But when I saw that the book you put out and it's getting into your first home, my first thought was, Derek's a tech guy. This is real bricks and mortar, right?
Yeah.
So explain how this works and how you got into it and where the idea comes from.
So I got into this because when I came home from US, in COVID, this housing issue was so explosive, and how crazy it was over the news every single day. And the friends and family I had that were like, how do I get into a house? Can't get into a house. It's crazy. I'm never going to be able to get one. I was like, okay, what's going on here? Why is this so nuts? And is anyone going to do anything differently about it? And so I thought maybe there's a company, or maybe there's a solution, or maybe there's some other way to invest in people to help them get a house. And I spent a couple of years looking at the whole issue as to, is it important to buy a house in New Zealand? Is it important that young people are able to buy it? What is the stuff that's blocking them, And eventually I looked at the whole system and I decided it was there are a lot of issues. And number one, it was highly manual. Number two, it's all intermediary, like separated out. So it's not like there's not like one service that helps you from the beginning to the end. Number three, there's no digitization, almost zero digitization of the journey of education, of coaching, of finding and getting a mortgage, of finding and getting a house for a first home. And so I was like, okay. And number four, the last thing is there's commission all over the place that's being split up everywhere. So my theory was actually this whole thing needs to be changed. You create one brand that helps from somebody from the beginning to the end. You digitize as much of it as possible so they can have self-learning kind of modules and steps that they take to get to that finish line. And as you get to the finish line, you help them get the lending, you help them get the house, and you split the commission with them. So you can fast track how much they have to save by maybe a couple of years. The last piece of the puzzle that really kind of when the penny dropped is all of the media talks about the average house price and 20% deposit, which is $1 million and it's 20%, so you need 200 grand. And I think that's the problem. We've told ourselves that's what it takes to buy a house, and so everyone just gives up.
Right.
When the reality is the median first home is around 600, and if you buy a brand new home, you need only 60,000. And then when I look at two average 30-year-olds, 60,000 is basically they've already got 42, 45 in KiwiSaver. So now what? You've got an $18,000 problem.
Yeah.
Aera gives you 10. Now you've got an $8,000 problem. What's your excuse?
Right. Yeah.
So this is the approach we're taking to the market. It's like most of you can do this.
Yeah. What's alienating to a lot of people, and the ones who do work it out and become landlords, they work out the logistics, the paperwork, all that stuff, and that's a huge barrier to a whole bunch of other people, right? Just actually how you go about
I think that is, and so we do the whole thing from end to end, and it starts in the app, and you basically guide them all the way. But actually, the biggest barrier is the mindset, and it's the knowledge. It's like, I can't do this. Well, actually, you can. Yes, you're not going to get the house that's in your dream, but you can get a first home.
Yeah.
So this whole book is all about if you are the average 30-year-old and you have the average salary, there's two of you and the average KiwiSaver, we can get you there in 272 days. So it's like, okay, now that you're leaning forward going, how? And then we lay it out. And if you're in that situation, it's very hard for you now to say to me, oh, there's no way I can buy a first home.
Yeah.
So that's the mission I'm on, to help people understand all that, digitize it, make it, as you say, it's a very physical product, but there's tens of thousands of people on the journey, which you can help them a lot through digital technology, learning, education content, and, rewarding them for that. Yeah,
well, look, that's great. I mean, you've got a lot of different business things going on. Do you ever, is it hard to keep track of everything you're involved with?
Not really, because, when you're building a company like this one, you focus most of your energy on that. So I have stepped back somewhat from the fund. I have an amazing partner, Nick, who lives in Aera, who's got probably one of the best jobs in the world. He's a global venture capitalist living in Aera. And I sit and, we look at all the companies and we make decisions on who to invest in. But, building a startup, which is a funny thing for me to go back and do, is quite all-consuming. And we've got two startups in our family. We've got a bakery in Grey Lynn called Floret's.
Right.
So my wife's a baker.
This is your wife's bakery.
So that's a startup founder who gets up at 5 a.m. And that's quite a lot. And we've got a son, 12. That's another startup. So you've got that's quite a bit to do.
I've got to mention it because it was headlines, but you brought the family home to New Zealand quite, famously in 2018 when the Labour government sort of offered you this job as Chief Technology Officer and then said there was no job. How traumatic was that as an experience and having to deal with all that attention, and how has it played out that you're sort of in New Zealand now anyway?
I mean, I think, you're lovely, a guy I love a lot from your company, Hamish, wrote, an article about that when I decided to tell the story and say, look, this is awful. And of course, it was extremely traumatic. It was definitely anything but kind, which is highly ironic. It was extremely difficult for the family. And it was something that I would not want anyone to be under that kind of pressure and or light, for pretty much 60 days straight. I think over 1,000 kind of media articles and, being in the Hansard 9 days in a row, like a football, National and Labour and everyone just kind of, it's absurd. And it to me was the epitome of the difference between people and politics. And it was the kind of crystallization of everything that's wrong with politics and politicians. And the difference, the vast, vast difference between what they say and how they say they behave and how they say they are and what they actually do. I could not have experienced a more harsh contrast between the two. I wouldn't wish it on anybody. The only thing I regret is not actually suing the government. Because I actually was I just want to get out of this because it was so harrowing. I wanted it to stop. But stupidly, my wife would disagree, but I honestly think to have kind of taught some sort of a lesson to look back on, I would have and should have taken a much more serious line about it. Like you cannot treat people like this who are coming to try and help and play a role that you've asked them to do. So that's the only kind of regret I have, because I had never experienced something like that before. I was like, couldn't really see straight. But now that I can, I don't think it's ever going to happen to me. But if it did, I would have such a very different Machiavellian approach to it, because they're kind of like, damn, no one cared about you at all from any sides of the establishment at that point.
You became the football of the
It's
the
like a toxic
debate.
football, because they don't want to be kind of wrapped into it.
I mean, do you still think we could use a CTO, a chief technology
I think the
officer?
title is totally wrong. I think definitely the country could use what that role was meant to be, which was about encapsulating and articulating what is a vision for how technology plays a role in accelerating the economy, productivity, and equity. And that's what the role was. And so you had a lot of spectators and shit throwers from the side saying, oh, he's not a CTO, he doesn't know how to code. That wasn't what the role was. It was about a roadmap for what is the role of technology and sustainable technology to help build a better country and a more fair country and a more productive and wealthier country. And I would say nobody would argue that we have solved any of that, and nobody would argue that we have any idea of how we're going to get there or what roadmap is. So there is some sort of role that's missing. No government seems to have a way to have a longer term vision about how we actually build this country. Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing right now, you mentioned you've got a son, 12 years old. If I get you to put a futurologist hat on for a minute, there's a lot of discussions I have with other parents at the moment are all about, concern about the AI revolution and what kids will be doing in the future. I mean, are you optimistic about that?
I'm always optimistic because there's always opportunities and there's always creative things that humans can do, right? So I think my son will probably be in some sort of creative field where the using your mind creatively and augmenting it with all the technology and the tools will help create and add some value to either some problem from business perspective or social perspective. So I'm pretty hopeful. There may be lots of other jobs that may suffer, like if people don't know how to evolve out of something that is going to get automated out. I think as a society, that's probably something we're not thinking enough about,
Yeah. Are there things that you encourage that you think are the skills that are going to survive? Is it the soft skills, that kind of thing?
I'm not really sure, but I think overall, and I'm definitely nowhere near up on this myself enough, I think spending more and more time interacting with all the various AI platforms is probably the best thing that you could start doing to understand what is the potential and power here. And that might help you shape what's possible and how you can become a superhuman, using these tools as opposed to becoming afraid of them. And I should be spending a lot more time on that. And I think I will be over the coming, years. But it's hard to predict where and how this all ends up,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like kids are a bit more entrepreneurial in New Zealand now than they used to be. Certainly, like we talked about the selling sneakers and they're on Sharesies and all that sort of stuff. I mean, do you feel like there's been a bit of a change in your lifetime around entrepreneurship? We've never been a hugely entrepreneurial
I think in New Zealand,
country.
definitely there's a narrative that, you can go and build stuff and build companies, and lots of young people, whether it's, restaurants or whether it's tech companies or whatever, I would say, I would definitely agree with that. There's much more of a culture of build it and create it, and you've got lots of people to point at to see, great stories. Yeah.
All right, before we get to the quickfire questions, just because, as I said, we can't go through every business you've been involved in, there's many. Are there any others that we haven't mentioned that you'd say particularly proud of, or ones that are highs and lows that stand out?
Well, there's definitely lows, but, in terms of from a money perspective, I think something that we've been doing that's interesting as a family is since, we made that very first sale in the Hyperfactory, we created a charitable trust, which is also called Aera, the Aera Foundation. Yeah. And I made a decision early on that from this point on, whatever I create for the rest of my life, some of it will go into a trust. And that becomes, as I get older, the vehicle, the financial vehicle, the platform, I suppose, to create the change in the world that, I hope to help see. And that's actually becoming more and more the North Star of everything we do. So the trust is basically here to create creative responses to social and environmental problems. And over the years, its financial capacity will just grow and grow and grow. And everything I do, including this company, is owned partly by the trust, including the venture fund. So it's just an interesting and unique way, I think, to link everything to a bigger purpose. And also for a way for my son to have something that's he's involved in from the very beginning, which is about contributing to communities and societies from the outset. And having an onus to do that, not
so
just. So
you're hands-on with some of the, where the charity money goes to charity?
Not yet, because it's quite select and small at the moment. And we're catalyzing new projects like the financial services company. We've catalyzed a new project that launched last month, which has a vision to build 1,000 benches across New Zealand that will last 1,000 years for places of contemplation and reflection in response to like the AI kind of what does this world look like. So it's both creating projects and then making, different grants like to galleries and things like that. But over the longer term, I think there's more and more exciting stuff that we'll be able to do, with the foundation.
Sure. And is there a story behind the word Aera? You've obviously
Aera it's basically the one brand that I wanted to just put everything under for the rest of my life. And
for people just listening, it's AERA.
Yeah. It's just the Latin root word for the English and all other Latin words, era, which is of our time, right? So everything I want to do and everything I do is either related to something that's timeless, so 1,000 benches for 1,000 years. People are still going to be sitting down in 1,000 years. Hopefully they're thinking about what their lives means and what they're going to do about, making the best of it. Climate change, for example, the fund that we invest in, that's something that's of our time. So it's either timeless or of our time. The housing crisis, if we don't solve it and create new solutions now, current generations, you can't go back. You can't put the genie back in the box. So I either focus on stuff that's going to last a really long time and going to still be around as a question in hundreds of years, or something that if we don't solve it in this generation or this kind of time horizon, you have longer term impacts. So it's been a very clear lens for me about where and how I spend my time. That's what Aera means.
Great. Well, let's get into some quick fire questions. Derek, what's the poorest you've ever been?
Oh my God, the poorest. Well, I did use all my student loan, borrow a lot of money using a margin trading account while I was a graduate, and had this giant share portfolio that was going really well, and then it all collapsed, and so I lost all my money and the money I'd borrowed. So that would be negative poor. I didn't actually get bankrupt because I had some friends and some family to help me out to fill the gap, but I was technically, And
it was that the dot-com bubble?
It was not related to that. The bet that went wrong was not related to that, but I was definitely negative at, 20, whatever it was, 2020, just 20.
Yeah. Well, it's a good.
I was really positive the month before, and then I was done. And that also accelerated the idea. Well, I better build a company because no job is ever going to pay this debt back.
Well, it's a great learning experience.
Haven't done it again.
What about when you finally got some money together? What would you say the most indulgent purchase you've ever made is?
Well, I don't buy a lot of stuff. I've still got this ticket to go to space with Galactic.
Oh, yeah.
That's quite expensive.
Yep. And is that still...
That is still... Apparently that's happening in a year and a half. So let's see. Yeah. That'll be interesting. But I'm hanging around waiting for it. Other than that, I buy strange things that last for a very long time. I've got an Einstein letter, for example, a letter he wrote.
Cool.
And that's very cool and quite indulgent. It doesn't do anything, but also it's not really mine, right? It's going to be passed on somehow to somebody else.
It's probably an investment, though. I mean,
it may be.
Yeah. Who knows? You don't buy it for that reason. How about financial advice? What is there a great piece of advice you've been given? What was the best piece of financial advice?
I don't think I've ever really been given it. I've never had people go, "Oh, you should do this and this." But I've read some good books, and the thing I wish I knew earlier. I read a book, I think the guy's named John Bogle, who created Vanguard. So the thing I wish most people knew and executed on earlier was just put money away into index funds from the beginning. And, for me, I think picking stocks is like gambling for the middle class. I honestly think almost nobody in the whole, last 50 years or last generation outlasts or outbeats beats the market for a generation. So anyone who's trying to do that otherwise, the best, the smartest, the most wise people in the world, apart from the Buffetts and maybe a handful that you can count on two hands, over a lifetime, you're going to lose. So just put it in the lowest cost index fund and put it away and do it since you were 20, and you're going to have a much better outcome.
That's what Buffett would say anyway.
I wish I had done that. And I didn't, That would be my advice.
Next question is, do you ever set goals? Now, I'm guessing you are the type of person who's sets a few goals. Do you have a 30-year plan or a 5-year plan? Or
I've always had these kind of bigger, longer term goals. And, you know, a lot of them used to be just about me and what I was going to do. And then as you get older, about your family and what kind of change you want to achieve. So I've always had goals. I always kind of have a little roadmap. It's probably 3 to 5 years and, you know, consistently check in on it. But now there are things you can't control. So it's like you can't really have certain goals around your son. You just want to help them become the best person they can be. And that's the goal, you know?
Yeah, fair enough. Is making money important to you, or is it more of a byproduct of success?
No, I mean, at the moment, I'm just motivated entirely about what is the change that you can achieve. You know, what is the future that you're trying to bring about? When I was very young, I thought that was what, you know, business was about money. And I thought you'd set these big goals, and I did. And I think now we're looking back on them, yes, you can, and maybe you should. But to me, the things that light me up are not the dollars. It's like, can you create something out of existence, out of nothing, that's going to make people's lives better?
Sure. I guess the money is what enables you to do more of that.
I think if you have more, then you can do more different types of things. But it's more like, well, how do I use it to do other things? Not I need it because I need a third house or a fourth, you know, Lamborghini or whatever it is.
Yeah. Finally, if you were the Prime Minister for the day and you had all the power, what would you do to try and solve the equity, economic inequality issues in this country?
So I think you couldn't do it in a day, but I honestly think that the real answer to that is you need to redesign a political system where the best people from different backgrounds and political views work together. Like you create a team out of individuals instead of creating individuals into a team.
Yeah.
So we have a feral, antagonistic, childish, kindergarten type environment in Wellington that's just getting worse and worse. And it's no different to many other parts of the world. At some point, we need to rebuild what it means to be in government and what it means to have a government. And you have the best people together. Like, I mean, probably at the beginning, an Ardern-Bill English partnership would have been a brilliant way to lead this country. But the way it's set up, there's just no way it could happen.
No way it can, yeah.
So like we did MMP, we did all those difficult decisions. I think my thing would be one Prime Minister should figure out how to rebuild the system in such a way that the very best people are in the very best seats, not just who's lying around and who's next on the list and, you know, lobbing arguments and abuse at each other. So it's not a pipe dream. Maybe it's one of the projects Aera works on.
Yeah.
Because that's really the way.
And to create a sort of a pathway for New Zealand rather than flip-flopping every 6 years.
In such an abusive, antagonistic, childish way, which is just like embarrassing for our children to watch.
Would you ever consider going to politics?
No, not after all that about abuse. But I think I would consider how you might embark on a 10 or 20-year project to create that kind of change.
Yeah.
I think people who are old enough and look at what's going on, they're like, maybe that's actually what the project should be, not who's in power, but how that power is created and shared. And you actually look at like the All Blacks, who are the best people to play these positions?
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter what team they came from. So it just is something when you look at, you're like, it makes no sense. Like, how can we not come up with a better way to do this? That's what I'd be working on. It'd take longer than a day though.
Yeah. Be a good workshop for a day.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Workshop.
Yeah. Brilliant. Hey, Derek, it's been great talking. Thanks for coming on Money Talks.
Awesome.
Cheers.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Money Talks. If you want to get in touch, drop me a line at liam.dan@nzherald.co.nz, and you can read more from me at nzherald.co.nz. Thanks to my producer, Ethan Sills, and sound engineer, Adam Pamana. Follow Money Talks on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes available every Thursday. And if you are new to the podcast, you can check out our back catalogue with over 60 guests from across our seasons.